If you're aspiring to become an avid learner, the journey doesn't begin with talent or titles. It begins with a few core capabilities: self-efficacy, reciprocal determinism, and self-regulation. Let's delve into each of these in detail. Self-efficacy is not about being confident all the time. It's about believing quietly but firmly that you can learn, adapt, and move forward even when the path isn't clear. Let me offer a simple visualization. Imagine your growth resting on four levers. Each lever matures over with focus and intentions, not overnight, not all at once, but with awareness and intent. The first lever is how we think. In the early stage, we set goals, but our mind often dwells on risks and sometimes even rehearses failure before we begin. As self-efficacy grows, goals become more ambitious. We still see risks, but now we plan for them. And slowly, we start anticipating success. At maturity, focus sharpens. Goals stretch higher, attention deepens, and the mind spends more time visualizing success than worrying about what could go wrong. The second lever is motivation. Initially, commitment rises and falls. Effort fluctuates. Giving up feels like relief. With growth, commitment stabilizes. Effort sustains longer, but real difficulty can still break momentum. At higher maturity, commitment becomes internal. Effort persists. Obstacles don't stop progress, they become part of it. The third lever is emotion. Early on, tough situations bring anxiety and high stress. Then comes the ability to cope, to manage emotions rather than be overwhelmed by them. And eventually, something powerful happens. Stress is no longer the enemy. It's channelized into focus, attention, and presence. The final lever is choice. At first, we avoid challenges to protect comfort. Then we accept challenges, but retreat when discomfort rises. At maturity, we begin choosing environments that stretch us, because growth, not comfort, becomes the priority. This is the journey of self-efficacy. Not a leap, but a progression. Not perfection, but direction. And the most important part, everyone in here is somewhere on this path. The question is not where you are. The question is, how do you plan to move forward? To become the person we aspire to be, it's not enough to work on skills alone. We also need to understand a deeper loop, how we influence our actions, and how our actions reshape the world around us. This loop is called reciprocal determinism, but in simple terms, it means this: who we are influences what we do influences our environment, and that environment, in turn, shapes who we become next. Growth happens when we learn to consciously participate in this loop. Let's visualize this journey across four dimensions. The first is awareness of self. At the early stage, our beliefs, emotions, biases, and confidence states operate quietly in the background. We act, but we don't quite know why. As maturity grows, we begin recognizing these internal drivers and understanding where they come from. At higher maturity, something powerful happens. We don't just recognize them, we choose them. We decide which beliefs to keep, which emotions to regulate, and which biases to challenge. The second dimension is intentional behavior. Initially, behavior is largely habitual and impulsive, driven by default reactions. With growth, habits weaken and goals begin to guide actions. At maturity, behavior becomes fully intentional, aligned not just with goals, but with deeply held values. The third dimension is how we relate to our environment. Early on, adversity triggers complaint or withdrawal. Then comes a shift. Complaints may remain, but so does action. Finding workarounds, seeking change, influencing outcomes. At higher maturity, we stop reacting to environments and start shaping them. We intentionally structure our social circles, physical spaces, and information inputs to support growth. The fourth dimension is seeing the loop itself. At first, we notice only final outcomes and accept them as fate. With awareness, we begin spotting feedback along the way, patterns forming, signals emerging. At maturity, we recognize the process while it is forming and intervene early, steering outcomes instead of reacting to them. This is the essence of reciprocal determinism, not control, but participation, not reaction, but influence. Everyone here is already part of this loop. The question is whether you're being shaped by it or consciously shaping it. And once you see the loop, you can't unsee it. You can only decide how deliberately you want to engage with it. Now, if there is one capability that quietly separates intention from achievement, it is self-regulation. Self-regulation is not about being strict with yourself. It's about staying oriented, especially when progress is slow, feedback is uncomfortable, or conditions keep changing. Think of it as an internal navigation system. The journey doesn't fail because the destination changes. It fails when the navigation is switched off. Let's visualize this through 4 dimensions. The first is goal clarity. At early stages, we operate with rough targets, more wishes than goals, and very little clarity of purpose. As maturity grows, purpose starts to emerge. We define short-term and long-term goals and begin to see how they connect. At higher maturity, goals become purpose-driven, consistent, and hierarchically organized. Daily actions clearly serving larger intent. The second dimension is sensitivity to gaps. Initially, when outcomes don't match goals, we ignore the gap or stay in denial. With growth, we start noticing misalignments and acknowledging that something isn't working. At maturity, even small gaps matter, not as failures, but as signals. They become early warnings that allow timely course correction. The third dimension is adjustment capacity. Early on, gaps trigger avoidance or impulsive reactions. Either we step back or react emotionally. Then we begin attempting fixes, sometimes effective, sometimes not. At higher maturity, adjustment becomes systematic. Strategies are refined, actions are realigned, and persistence continues until progress and purpose come back into sync. The fourth dimension is emotional regulation. When progress is slow, early stages are marked by discouragement, anxiety, or apathy. With awareness, emotions are recognized and brought under control. At maturity, emotions become data. Frustration signals the need for more effort. Discomfort signals growth. Motivation becomes renewable. This is self-regulation in action. Not rigidity, but responsiveness. Not self-control, but self-alignment. Everyone here already regulates themselves to some degree. The difference lies in how consciously and how constructively you do it. And once this internal navigation system is tuned, progress doesn't depend on perfect conditions. It depends on your ability to stay aligned, adjust, and move forward again and again. What we have explored so far are not techniques, tools, or shortcuts, but foundations. Self-efficacy gives you the belief that growth is possible. Reciprocal determinism gives you the awareness that you are both shaped by and shaping your world. Self-regulation gives you the ability to stay aligned when intention meets reality. Together, these capabilities don't make the journey easy, but they make it navigable, repeatable, and meaningful. They prepare you not just to learn, but to learn deliberately. Not just to act, but to act with intent. In the next part, we will build on these foundations, looking at the thinking approaches, systems, and methods that allows such individuals to translate purpose into consistent action and aspiration into a life that is consciously designed rather than accidentally lived.